Welcome back, everyone, to the Property Journey podcast. Welcome, Roy.
Afternoon, Chris.
It's been a few weeks since we've sat down. Been very busy. This time of year is always very busy.
Great time of year.
The housing market always takes a little bit of a boom towards the summer months.
This year has definitely it's done that.
Yeah, definitely. Episode 45, Roy. I want to focus just on everything that buyers maybe would forget to check throughout the process. Sometimes these things can kind of crop up and you maybe have forgot to look at it, either maybe during the process. Sometimes these things happen after the process, and there's probably very little that you can actually do about it at that stage. But what would you say are probably some of the most common things that people would forget to check before purchasing a property? When I think of that, I'm thinking maybe, say for example, the price of rates. Maybe what your potential rate bill could be. Sometimes you kind of think to yourself, "Oh, that's great, I'm going to buy this big property," and then your rates bill lands then in the middle of the year, and you think to yourself, "Oh,
That's a good one." A lot of people just to work out their budget as to this is how much deposit I need. So I always think, well, owning a house or like running a house is more like running a business. So you need to work out your budget, and yes, you need a deposit to buy the house, but you need like another wee pot of money to pay all the bills and to keep everything running, as opposed to just going from a week to week basis getting your wages or month to month on your salary. So yes, quite rightly, they forget to do their costings. So insurance, and there's quite a different number of different insurances: life insurance, critical illness, what have you. You've got your house insurance, and then you've got your rates as well, and then probably maintenance. A lot of people forget about maintenance of a house. You do need to keep on top of it, whether that is getting your gutters cleaned out every couple of years, even simple things like painting fences or your garden. That might be something you're not good at yourself. So quite simply, you have to pay somebody to do it, and those sort of tasks now at the minute are getting very costly.
sometimes you do think, that you're saying about painting, and sometimes you can kind of look at the house and think to yourself, that's great or whatever, because it's maybe been freshly painted and things like that. And then the first time that you go to do it, you maybe have the front of the house, then you maybe go around the back and you don't realise there's maybe external walls, there's garden walls, sheds, whatever it happens to be. And by the time you start, you really need your week off in the summer or something to actually just do the painting.
And another thing we see quite regularly, people buying out in the country, and yes, a house looks fantastic and the garden looks fantastic, but a lot of people don't realise just how much time is needed to maintain a garden. And you can buy a house and that's lovely, and I've seen it where people have bought a house and it's lovely, and in fact I can think of 2 or 3 at the minute, and you drive past it now, it's about 18 months, 2 years later, there hasn't been anywhere near the gardening done, and the house, in my opinion, has probably been devalued because of it. So you have to figure out maintenance as to, are you fit to do it? Have you got the skills to do it? Ultimately, have you the time to do it? That can be a big killer for a lot of people. And then if not, again, you have to pay somebody to do it.
Yeah. And then whenever you start, as you say for example, fencing or things like that there, if you need fencing put up or whatnot, you big house out in the country or whatever, you don't realise just maybe how big it is. The cost then that goes into it, it's not maybe half a day's work, you're into maybe 3-4 days work, plus then all the materials on top of that. It racks up quite quickly. Why do buyers sometimes then often focus on appearance instead of maybe those practical issues? You're maybe falling in love with the house, but you're forgetting to check some of the practicalities around the house.
I think it's just how some people are geared. We're in a world now where nothing is organised, nothing is thought about. People decide there and then. So for instance, a lot of people decide maybe to go on holidays or to book for next week or next month, as opposed to at the start of the year planning it out. So that's why I think a lot of people forget about all these practicalities, because they're making a last minute decision. In fact, a lot of house purchases, particularly first time buyers, they don't plan that they're going to be buying a house in a year's time or 2 years' time. it's very common for them to decide, here, we'll buy a house.
Yeah.
And the next thing, they go and look at one, and within a week, they've one agreed and the mortgage offer applied for. And then it kind of snowballs very, very quickly after that.
It's on a whim nearly, where it's just done rapid. And then, as you say, then you're going to the house, but you're falling in love with the house based on the appearance of the house. And the likes of them practicality things where, you haven't done your research on what the rates are. You haven't done your research on kind of the outside garden space. You haven't done your research on maybe just what kind of is happening maybe on the inside of the property. And before you know it, there's the problems start to kick in at the end up. Is there any maybe legalities or legal issues or restrictions that people should be aware of beforehand that they should maybe check out? Is one of the ones maybe again springing to mind, Roy, would be within developments and things like that. There's rules and what you should be doing and shouldn't be doing and things like that.
Good point. A lot of people believe whenever they buy a house they can do whatever they want with it, but what happens is if you buy a house that it's in a development or it's in the town, there's restrictions as to what you can and what you can't do. So two of the main ones which you come up against would be running a business from your house. So the stereotypical ones would be somebody maybe doing a bit of beauty or mechanicking, those sorts of things. You're running a business from your house. You can't do that. So that immediately throws a spanner in the works, so to speak. Excuse the pun. And then parking vehicles. So for instance, you could be restricted on parking commercial van or lorry or trailer or anything like that. So depending on your job or your business, you can't park. So a lot of people forget about that as well.
And I this is curiosity out of anything, but the likes of running a business and stuff from home, is that essentially, people parking, across curbings? Is it footfall, things like that that kind of why that is in place, or is it just kind of always nearly been there?
It's probably more about enjoyment for the development. So there's two aspects of it. So the first one is enjoyment of the development. So whenever clients ask me that, I always turn it around to say, well, would you actually appreciate your neighbour if they parked a big 40-foot lorry, 50-foot lorry in front of your house? Are you going to appreciate your neighbour doing beauty at next door? Okay, it might be convenient for yourself, but it could be 10, 15 cars arriving at the house every day, parking, blocking up everywhere. So it becomes a nuisance and annoyance to the neighbours. But then also from a legal point of view, if you're running businesses, you've got compliance to go through. You've got your planning permission, you've got your building regulations, your health and safety and all the rest of it. But as I say, from a builder's point of view, they're really looking more so at an enjoyment and an image as well for the development, because an image can be, a development reputation can be pulled down maybe if, for instance, if you went into a development and there was caravans parked everywhere and scrap metal from mechanics and the stereotypical ones, it's not going to encourage anybody to buy there.
3 half-broken cars lying in the front garden.
Yes.
I can understand it, and because that's I think probably one of the things I was getting at, Roy, is that there's more and more people putting in the likes of cabins and these types of things in the back gardens and whatnot. I'm assuming that you've come across probably many of people coming and there's been issues raised.
There's been a lot of confusion over working from home, or you can run a company from your house. So for instance, you could run a multi-million-pound company from your house, but if you've got no deliveries or nothing, you could run an online business where it's simply just remote and there's not one delivery or not one customer coming to your house. That's fine, because again, the interpretation of the deeds is really for the enjoyment for everybody else. But simply running a business, people coming backwards and forwards.
Boundaries, rights of way, access, these types of things, are they something that you should be checking out? Probably not so much maybe in developments and things, but maybe I would say out in the country.
More so in the country. Oddly enough, I would say there probably wouldn't be a week goes past that we don't get an inquiry in about boundaries. And contrary to everybody's belief, you don't get a map or a plan of your boundaries to say, you know, that line there is, you know, 20 meters and that fence there is 30 meters or what have you. There's simply a map that has no numbers on it, no measurements, but it's drawn to scale. And that simply then, you can take that, you can measure it out, you can work out the scale from it, and then that gives you an indication. But that still doesn't necessarily marry it up on the ground.
Yeah.
The most accurate way of figuring it out is to get a surveyor out. Now, for the vast majority of people, it's fairly straightforward in the town. Normally the builder will have put a fence right bang down in the middle, but in the country, it can be a wee bit more questionable. You know, nobody's maybe looked at boundaries for a long time, and then a fence is blown down or trees falling down, or there's a bit of a neighbour dispute, and then the whole thing turns.
Yeah. Because probably one of the other ones that we've maybe also seen coming in and things like that there then is like, you know, like retaining walls or boundary walls and who owns them and that side of things. You know, is that just one of those ones where 9 times out of 10, if there's a fence running up the middle of the boundary line, or if there's a wall running up the middle of the boundary line, it's both sides?
Generally, I'd be safe to say 9 times out of 10 it's a shared boundary. So that means there's all these myths as to whose boards, you know, is on whose side of it, and that means that's the responsibility. That means absolutely nothing.
It's the way it was put up.
It's the way it's put up. It's just the luck of the draw that day when the fence was put up. So if it's bang down the middle, 9 times out of 10 on average, it's each owner on either side is equally responsible for maintaining, repairing, replacing and upkeeping it.
Yeah. What hidden costs then do buyers regularly overlook? You know, things that they're maybe not checking. Would you say that's maybe surveys? Would you say that it's, you know, the likes of legal fees? There's maybe fees there with Help to Buy ISAs, all those types of things that are kind of hidden, but you're not thinking about them?
There's probably a few things, yes. So going through the whole process, it is becoming more popular now for surveys to be done. Surveys generally, the more detailed you want it to be, then the more costly it is, and that could range from £400 to £1,000, maybe more. A lot of people forget about legal costs. So yes, you get some people who get a cost at the start, but that cost is technically it's on average. The legal game isn't really like, you know, like a painter or a joiner, where most of the time they're able to give you like nearly a fixed fee service. Solicitors can't provide a fixed fee service, so it's something where you're given on average this is what the cost is going to be. Even when they get the file to a stage where they can then accurately cost it, you're still probably through the process a fair wee bit as well. So there can be additional costs depending on maybe what lender you go with, or additional bank fees, or a big one which a lot of people don't realise is if there's gifts involved. So if there's gifts being, you know, towards the deposit being gifted in, then there's extra searches, checks and what have you. And it's not uncommon that maybe it's a young couple, their parents are gifting, maybe their parents are separated, so you have step parents, so all of a sudden you could have 4 people, 5 people giving in a deposit. There's extra fees, whereas at the start it was assumed maybe, well, it's just a couple, and then there's another couple of £100 on search fees and things.
And fees. Why should buyers then research the surrounding area? I think we might have talked about this in the last one. You were getting a bit creepy, Roy, to be honest. You were driving around the estate at 9 o'clock at night and things.
I was suggesting.
You know, so it's not just the property itself that you're checking, it's the surrounding area. And as you did mention, and you're right in what you're mentioning, what's it like at 9 o'clock in the morning or 8:30? You know, what's the school runs maybe like? Is there schools close by? Is it congested? Is it, you know, is there Derek down the road having a party every Saturday night? You know, is that the types of things that you forget to check that you should be checking?
A lot of people do. Generally, we're a country where most people, if they're going to move, they're in a town and they know everything that's happening in the town. But occasionally you do come across people who generally are just buying a house in a town that they know nothing about. So I had somebody there recently, and I always ask the questions, you know, I'll see you're buying such and such and you're living here. That's a wee bit of a jaunt there for you. What's taking you to that? and you get wild answers. Just sometimes it could be, oh well, sure, you know, maybe looking to downsize and looking at something a wee bit cheaper. So they've picked a town that could be in the middle of nowhere, a village in the middle of nowhere with no direct links, and they're going to be travelling an extra 20 minutes to and from work every day. So it's just a matter of the practicalities of it. And then at this time of year, just it's the summertime, you know, what sort of an area are you living in? Is there going to be the flags and bonfires and whatever else? And you know, that could end up that you haven't done your research, and that may not be something for you.
There's one planted out the front of your house and you didn't realise it.
And your fascia board's going to be melted.
You know, but yeah, again, it's those types of things that you forget to check. You maybe don't think about it because you could turn up on a Saturday morning, for example, for a viewing, and the housing estate's great and development's fine or whatever. And you maybe go there on a Monday morning and it's completely different because there's a factory, you know, 200 metres down the road, and you know there's constant lorries coming up past, you know, those types of things that you're forgetting about and not checking if you're rushing the process or rushing in to buy the property. And I suppose that kind of then maybe links in with the all important, Roy, always forget to check on street parking.
Yes, I was thinking there when you were talking about that. I can think of one housing executive estate that if you go there during the day, you can park anywhere. There's loads of spaces. Go there at 6 o'clock at night and you can't park anywhere. Yeah, the place is rammed with cars, and you could end up, I don't know whether every neighbour has their own allocated or that was undeclared car parking space, which means then you park into it, you're going to be in trouble, you know.
And I suppose the big thing now in terms of parking, and with, you know, some of the older housing estates, or as you said, housing executive housing, a lot of them were never built with driveways. No. So it was on street parking, and that was all well and good when there was what you would have described back in the day, the family car.
If even, it probably would have been 1 in 3 houses maybe had the family car.
You know, so the family car was one car. Now the family has 4 cars, you know, because, you know, atypical. Mum maybe has one, dad maybe has one, maybe has a work van or something like that there. Maybe 2 children. They're now at 17, 18, 19, 20 or whatever, still living at home because they can't afford maybe their own house or whatever. There's 2 cars. So before you know it, this small house has 4 cars. And multiply that out about, you know, at a row of houses. Disaster, like. If you don't do the check on that as well, as you say, go round to the house at 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock in the afternoon, park anywhere, go round at 7 o'clock in the evening.
You'll get a few unpleasantries said to you.
You know, they're parking in the green in the middle of the estate. Like, it is a big thing, and there's many arguments over parking. I suppose the thing that you do have to realise is that it's not designated. Yeah. It really is.
It might be a space that you've used or it's convenient to you, but simply it may not be yours. Yeah. And then that's where the neighbour rows start. Because,
you know, if you're parking on the road, it's road service. They own it. Nobody else does, you know. So possibly one thing that could knock on, again, you mentioned there, Roy, about if you're working from home, things like that there, is where the property is that you're buying, broadband, Wi-Fi speeds, and mobile signal.
Mobile signal would be a good one. There's quite a few, still a few towns or areas whereby the signal can be poor, maybe for a particular network, which you've spent many years using, and then all of a sudden you've got no signal. So yeah, just the small things. Broadband, again, I've never thought about it too much because I don't need anything fancy as such, but yes, depending on if you're working from home and what it is that you need, it could be the case that the quality isn't sufficient.
Yeah. Especially nowadays, like with technology, how advanced that it is becoming, you know, you just don't need a wee simple, you know, Wi-Fi speed now. Everything's so highly defined, HD or whatever it happens to be, 4K, whatever, takes up a lot more, so it does. So that there can all have an impact on when you're purchasing. Is there any warning signs that if you're doing a viewing, for example, that maybe buyers forget to check when they're, within the property looking about?
Good question. There's nothing jumping out at me for the likes. Well, practicalities. Just again, I wouldn't say warning signs, but you're looking at about, does it suit your needs?
Mm-hmm.
So if it is something that you're looking to work from home, what way is the house layout? Is there an additional room, and where is that room, and could that be kitted out to suit your needs? Whereas a lot of people maybe don't visualize that or see that. But I wouldn't say there's any. Can't think of anything for warning signs to look out for.
Probably maybe one that's springing to my mind, Roy, was that, and I think we had talked about it in maybe the last episode, was the way that your house maybe is positioned with the way that the sun comes around. So if you have the end of your house, for example, that has no windows on the side where the sun's moving around through the day, your house is going to be extremely dark.
Yeah.
Throughout the day. So is it wee things like that there where you're kind of maybe watching out for when you are doing the viewing? You're looking at the house and you're kind of going, I can visualize that, or maybe that is going to be,
If it is something that you're maybe going to spend a lot of time at home, or in maybe spring and summertime, if you are looking to maximize the use of the garden, that could be something then yes you look at, because if you envisage yourself where you want to sit out in your back garden and enjoy the summer evenings, and then you buy the house and realise the sun's at the front.
Yeah.
There's no real use to you.
Yeah.
So yes, if it is something where you want to do that, so yeah, I suppose warning signs to come back to it. If that's something that you want to do and they don't have nice back garden and patio or what have you, that would indicate that it's not being used at that point. So therefore, that's the reason why.
Yeah. What have you maybe seen with regards to maybe planning applications or maybe nearby developments maybe coming up affecting value on property? Is it a big thing, or?
Generally, not really, unless your development backs onto a site or green land close to the town country verge or edge. At some point, I always advise clients, listen, there's maybe no application in at the minute for this, but on the law of probabilities, it's going to be at some point. So you have to be prepared. The house that you're maybe buying is valued more because that's great. It's looking out over on a lovely green field. But if somebody starts building there, well then, it's going to put people off, because then immediately they're not benefiting from a green field and they're going to have people looking in on them.
Yeah. What should buyers maybe know or maybe check with regards to service charges or management fees? I know service charges over in England at the minute, there's a big debate about them, where when people first moved in, the service charge was maybe 200 quid, 250 quid a year, whatever. You see them now where they're not 200 or 250 quid, they're 10 times that for the year. Is these the types of things that you gain? They're a hidden, I don't want to say a hidden fee because they're not hidden.
Yeah.
But they're not something that people are checking if they're maybe caught up on other stuff within the process.
On average, most first-time buyers don't really know about it. And I am seeing, I could be corrected in this, but I do believe a lot of developers would put this maybe on their sales brochures, but it's still not asked or still not inquired. And I know by the time the client's in with me and we're going through everything, I point out to them, listen, there's a management company, this is what it's going to do, and this is what it's roughly going to cost you. Most people haven't heard of it. Now, when you go through somebody who's buying their second house, well then they know about it, so it's common sense. So the cost of it, yes, it does be a bit of a shock. On average, typically you're seeing it's a bill per year of about £200. But if that's in a development, maybe in particular areas of the country, there could be significantly more than that. So it could be maybe, I can think of one actually locally. I think it's just £600 a year, maybe more. But ultimately, where you really have to check is not if you're buying a house, but if you're buying an apartment. Because if you're buying an apartment, there's generally more costs incurred. Because in an apartment, effectively the outer shell is owned by the management company. So that means if the roof needs replaced, or what else, maybe a lift needs a new lift in the building, that all has to be shared out between every homeowner or every apartment owner. And then there's a lot more compliance, whereby there has to be electric checks done probably on a weekly basis, cleaning, health and safety records, all of that. So you're into, a service charge that could be maybe £1,500, £2,500 a year.
Well, that's what I was going to point out, was the service charges is mainly geared towards the likes of apartment blocks and things like that there. It's, as you say there, if you're replacing carpet and there's 6 or 8 floors, the carpets for 6 or 8 floors is being shared out amongst everyone. It's a big debate at the minute, because a lot of people I have seen it. It's in the news. There's debates about it. Where service charges have went as far as $3,500-4,000 a year. People can't sell their apartment essentially on the basis that no one else is willing to pay that. Per year. So it's catch-22 at the minute. So it's on. I've picked up on sort of keeping an eye on it as well. What insurance, or like it's saying flood risk checks here, we're kind of fairly lucky in this country that, flooding isn't, I'm not saying that it's not an issue.
It's more localised. In certain areas. Is that something that buyers would need to check? Again, going forward, Roy, with the way that the weather is kind of going, is it something that might come to the fore a wee bit more? I don't know. Well, it is a check that a lot of people would overlook, unless maybe somebody's buying local and they have local knowledge of it. Now, I can think of some areas locally, but they were generally flooding probably more so just for the fact that the infrastructure wasn't good enough and surface water wasn't getting away. I know the department has worked in those areas and that's now resolved, but it is still something that probably at the end of the day, if you're not far from a river or you're not, those sorts of things, maybe you should consider it. Now, there is a safety net in place, in that there's a document that a seller has to complete whenever they're selling, and one of the questions is, has the area ever flooded? So that in itself should be an indicator. And then if that seller has misled the buyer, well, then there is basically a comeback on that down the line. But ultimately, it is something that could be forgotten about. Now, one wee tip is, if you maybe get your house insurance ordered a lot sooner than what you need it, that could be like a check for you, because the insurance companies are all clued in. Because at the end of the day, they've got all the data as to, is it a high crime rate, is it a flood risk, all these other different statistics where
they've had claims from pretty much previously.
Is it going to cost them money, is what they're looking about it. So we have come across scenarios whereby an area is possibly a bit more risky of flooding, and whenever the house insurance gets ordered or paid for, then that's questioned or flagged up at that point. And a buyer has an opportunity to actually maybe pull out or negotiate or look into it more. If you could kind of then maybe give buyers a checklist so that they maybe wouldn't skip over a few things, would there be a top 3 or whatever that you would have on it? Checklist would be in no particular order. Check your figures, and then put in a contingency as well. Even, it might sound extreme here, but a contingency of an extra £2,000 or £3,000, because whenever you move into the property, it might need a few wee repairs, or whenever you viewed the property, it maybe looked lovely, but that's because it had all their belongings in it, so you'd have to do all of that. Second of all, checklist or priority would be, get the right sort of conveyancing solicitor. So, not necessarily just a solicitor. Like, I had dealings, for instance, this morning with a solicitor, and it's a very protracted transaction, but ultimately they're finding every problem possible, because their mindset is more to claims and litigation and divorces, whereas with conveyancing it should be more, well, it's straightforward. One person wants to move from one house to the other, so let's make it work. And if there's a wee bit of a hurdle in the middle, let's get a solution as to finding the problem. So getting the right sort of solicitor. And then maybe the third one, just practicalities of the house to make sure it all suits.
Don't rush.
Yeah, that'd be a good one actually, because a lot of buyers, they're pushing and pushing. They think that when they've agreed the house that they should be getting the keys within a few weeks. It takes quite some time, and then they're rushing it, and then they've maybe nowhere to live because they've maybe jumped the gun and handed their notice in to their landlord, and they're trying to pick a date and everything else fit into place, whereas everything else should be fitting into place, and then you've got your date.
Yeah. But that's everything for this episode, Roy, episode 45. Everything buyers forget to check. If anyone does have any questions, folks, be sure to send them in. If there's wee things that you think that we could discuss in further episodes, send them in. As I say, this is us just going off the top of our head, but there's certainly plenty more talking points out there that we could definitely discuss. So thank you very much, Roy.
Thank you, Chris.
Again. And don't forget, everyone, to check in to the next episode whenever it's live. Thank you.